of you! You leave her alone, or you'll regret it!
She grabbed the Mafia boss's sleeve with a child's fearless grip. Apologized to my mama, and Siwoo felt something in his chest he'd buried for 6 years finally break. Siwoo stood at the window of his penthouse, watching the city bleed neon into the rain. Below him, men who feared his name moved like ants, clearing debts, delivering warnings, disappearing problems. He hadn't smiled in months, didn't remember the last time he'd wanted to. His phone buzzed, a shipment delayed. He didn't raise his voice. He never did. He simply said, "Handle it." And the silence after was worse than any shout. Across the city, in the servants' quarters of that same mansion, Alice knelt on tile floors older than her daughter, scrubbing grout with hands that had long since stopped asking for softer work. 6-year-old Amara sat cross-legged nearby, drawing a lion with a crown, humming to herself. "Mama, why do you always look tired here?" Amara asked, not looking up from her drawing. Alice's hands paused on the floor. "Because tired pays the bills, baby. Does it hurt your heart too?" Alice didn't answer that one. She never did. Not since the mansion, not since the name Cha Si-woo had become something she flinched away from in conversations she couldn't leave. Amara held up her drawing. "This is the Mafia boss. Everyone says he's scary." "He is," Alice said quietly. "He doesn't scare me," Amara said, and went back to coloring, adding a crown of teeth to the lion's mane. Alice looked at her daughter and said nothing, because some fears you don't explain to a child. You just try to keep them small enough not to notice the danger circling closer, one hallway at a time. Upstairs, Siwoo's driver mentioned casually that a new housekeeper had started that week. Siwoo didn't look up from his files. "Fine," he said. "Keep her out of my way." The mansion's east hall smelled of jasmine and floor polish when Siwoo walked through it. Phone pressed to his ear. Voice clipped over a deal collapsing in Macau. He didn't see the new housekeeper crossing his path with a tray of tea. The collision was quick, porcelain shattering, hot liquid soaking his sleeve. Alice dropped instantly, gathering shards with trembling hands, murmuring apologies out of habit. "Do you know how much that set cost?" Siwoo said, voice flat, cold. "Clean it and don't cry about it. I don't have patience for scenes." Alice's face burned with humiliation. That was the exact moment Amara turned the corner, saw her mother on the floor, saw the man standing over her like a judge. She marched forward, small fists clenched. "Apologize to my mama." Siwoo turned, mildly stunned by the audacity of a child barely reaching his waist. "Move! You made her fall. You yelled at her. Now you're being rude about it," Amara said. "That's 3 things. Fix them." Something in her voice, not fear, not deference, landed somewhere in Siwoo's chest he thought he'd sealed shut years ago. Her eyes, familiar in a way that unsettled him more than any rival ever had. "I'm not apologizing to a child," he said, quieter than before. "Then say it to her." Amara pointed at Alice, who knelt frozen, praying her daughter would stop before this went too far. Siwoo stared at Amara a moment too long. "Fine," he said finally. "I apologize for the mess." Amara studied him. "That's not a real apology. Try again." The hallway went silent, waiting to see if the most feared man in Korea would yield to a child half his height. Siwoo didn't apologize again. He turned and walked away, jaw tight, leaving Alice kneeling in broken porcelain, and Amara staring after him with her hands on her hips, unsatisfied but not defeated. That night, Siwoo sat alone in his office, the incident replaying against his will, her eyes. He told himself it was nothing. Coincidence, exhaustion, a trick of dim lighting. He poured a drink he didn't finish. "Find out who she is," he told his head of security, the housekeeper, and the daughter. Downstairs, Alice packed Amara's school bag with shaking hands, already rehearsing her resignation. "We're leaving this job," she said. "I'll find something else." "Why?" Amara asked. "I like it here. The Lion Man needs fixing. He's not a project baby. He's dangerous. People like him don't change, and people like us don't get to push them." "You're scared of him," Amara said, matter of fact. Alice didn't deny it. She'd spent 6 years building a life small enough that no one from her past could find her in it. Cha Si-woo finding her again, even by accident, felt like a door she'd nailed shut being pried back open. The next morning, she handed in her resignation letter. The estate manager wouldn't accept it. "Mr. Cha said your position stays," he said, avoiding her eyes. He was specific about it. Alice's stomach dropped. He remembered her. He had to. There was no other explanation for a man who fired staff over spilled coffee suddenly protecting a housekeeper who'd broken his favorite tea set. She said nothing, but that night, she checked twice that the doors were locked and didn't sleep. Si-woo summoned Alice to his office the following week, a household matter, he claimed. Payroll discrepancies needing her signature. It was a lie, and both of them seemed to know it. She stood stiffly by the door, refusing to sit. "You wanted something?" He studied her face, searching for confirmation of something he wasn't ready to say aloud. "How long have you worked here?" 3 months. "Before that?" Alice's hands tightened around the folder she held. "Does it matter?" "It might," he said, quieter than his usual clipped tone. She said nothing, and the silence between them stretched long enough to become its own kind of answer. Meanwhile, Amara had taken to appearing wherever Si-woo happened to be. The garden, the hallway outside his study, armed with a small chalkboard she'd taken from her school bag. She propped it against the wall near his office door, said sorry properly, 0, made scary face, 2. Si-woo found it there that evening and stood staring at it longer than he'd admit to anyone. "What is this?" he asked when Amara appeared beside him, unbothered by his size or his reputation. "I'm tracking your improvement," she said. "You can't fix something you don't measure. I'm not something that needs fixing. Everyone needs fixing," Amara said simply, and walked off, leaving him alone with the chalkboard and the uncomfortable feeling that he was being studied by someone far more perceptive than her age should allow. Alice, watching from the hallway, felt dread pooling low in her stomach, because Si-woo wasn't walking away from her daughter. He was staying close. Too close. It was the photograph that undid him. Si-woo found it by accident. Amara had dropped a small framed picture near the garden bench, one she carried in her school bag for reasons only a child could explain. He picked it up to return it and froze. Alice, younger, laughing, a hospital band still on her wrist, holding a newborn wrapped in blue. The date stamped in the corner struck him like a blow to the chest. 9 months, almost to the day, from the night Alice disappeared from his life without a word. The night his father's men had come for her. The night he'd been told she'd left the country, left him, wanted nothing more to do with a man born into blood and violence. He hadn't believed it then. He'd looked for her anyway, quietly, for years, until looking became too painful to continue. He found Alice in the laundry room, hands buried in linens, and set the photograph gently on the counter between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked in a way it never had in front of anyone. Alice's hands stilled. "Tell you what? That she's mine." The room went silent except for the hum of the dryer. Alice's eyes filled, not with surprise, but with the exhaustion of a secret finally catching up to her. "Your father made it very clear what would happen to us if I stayed," she whispered. "I left to protect her, not to hurt you." Si-woo stared at the photograph, at the daughter he never knew he had, and felt 6 years of carefully built control begin to crumble. Something shifted after that. Si-woo began appearing at the small cottage on the estate grounds where Alice and Amara lived, laptop forgotten in the car, tie loosened for the first time in years. Amara took immediate ownership of his transformation, updating her chalkboard nightly. "Ate dinner with us 3, smiled without meaning to. 5, you're doing better," she told him one evening, climbing onto the chair beside him. "But you still have the sad eyes sometimes." "I'm working on it," he said, and meant it. Alice watched them from the kitchen doorway, her daughter teaching a Mafia boss how to sit at a dinner table like a person instead of a weapon, and felt something long frozen in her chest begin, carefully, to thaw. One night, Amara fell asleep on the couch mid-sentence, and Si-woo carried her to bed without being asked, tucking the blanket the way Alice showed him. Awkward but trying. "You're good at this." Alice said quietly from the doorway. Better than I expected. I missed 6 years, he said. I don't intend to miss any more. Alice's guard, built brick by brick since the night she fled his father's men, cracked slightly. You still scare me, she admitted. Not you. What comes with you? I know, he said. I'm handling it. For a moment, standing in the soft lamplight of a home that had never belonged to violence, it felt almost possible. A family, quietly assembling itself out of a lie finally broken open. Then his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. His jaw tightened. The moment ended. The call was a warning. A rival faction, the Jung Syndicate, old enemies of his father, had discovered Amara's existence. Discovered where she slept, what school she'd start in the fall, the color of the ribbon she wore in her hair. Siwoo arrived at the cottage after midnight. Controlled panic in every line of his body. Pack a bag now. Both of you. Alice's blood went cold. What happened? They know about her, he said. They know about you. This is exactly what I promised myself would never happen again. You promised yourself, Alice said, voice rising. And then you let us stay here anyway. You let us get close to you, knowing this world doesn't let go of people. I was trying to protect you. By putting a target on my daughter's back? The words landed like a slap. Siwoo said nothing, because there was nothing to defend. That night, 2 armed men breached the estate's outer gate. Guards intercepted them, but not before a shot shattered the cottage window, and Amara screamed, and Alice threw herself over her daughter on the floor, glass raining around them. Siwoo arrived seconds later, gun already drawn. Terror on his face for the first time in years. Real terror, the kind money and power couldn't shield him from. They took Amara anyway. In the chaos, in the 3 seconds it took Siwoo to clear the room, someone dragged her screaming into a car idling in the dark. Alice's scream tore through the night. Siwoo stood frozen, staring at the empty driveway, at the chalkboard lying shattered on the floor beside him. Siwoo had spent his life choosing power over vulnerability, silence over truth. Now, standing in the wreckage of the cottage, he faced the only choice that mattered. He could handle this quietly, the way his father would have, the way the syndicate expected, trading and negotiating through cold channels, protecting the empire above all else. Or he could burn every alliance, every carefully built shield of secrecy, and go to war for a 6-year-old girl who'd taught him what an apology actually meant. He chose Amara. Within the hour, he'd mobilized every resource he had, called in debts he'd never intended to collect, revealed intelligence networks he'd kept hidden even from his own men. He moved through the city like something unleashed, tracking the syndicate's safe house with a focus that terrified even his most loyal soldiers. Alice, waiting at the estate, alone with her fear, made her own choice. She called him, not out of hope, but because some part of her, despite everything, believed he would bring her daughter home. Siwoo, she whispered when he answered. Please. I'm not the man who disappears, he said. Not again. Not this time. He found the safe house before dawn. Amara was there, tear-streaked but unharmed, more furious than afraid, having already informed her captors twice that her father would make the scary face if they didn't let her go. Siwoo walked through gunfire he barely registered, lifted his daughter into his arms, and for the first time in years, felt no fear at all. Only the terrifying, overwhelming relief of having something worth losing everything for. Amara refused to let go of his neck the entire drive home, muttering into his shoulder about the men who'd taken her toys away and hadn't even said sorry. They're very rude, she informed him. Worse than you were. Siwoo laughed. A real laugh, rough and unfamiliar in his throat. The first in longer than he could remember. Alice was waiting at the gate, and when the car stopped, she ran, gathering Amara into her arms, sobbing into her daughter's hair while Siwoo stood back. Siwoo, watching the family he'd almost lost before he ever truly had it. You came back, Alice said, looking up at him over Amara's shoulder. I told you, he said quietly. I'm not the man who disappears. Later that night, Once Amara had finally fallen asleep between them on the couch, Alice admitted the truth she'd carried alone for years. I suspected you'd never stopped looking for us. I just didn't know how to let you find us without everything burning down. It almost did, Siwu said. But it didn't, Alice said. Because for once, you chose us over the Empire. Siwu looked down at his sleeping daughter. At the chalkboard Amara had insisted on rebuilding that very evening, propped now against the living room wall, said sorry the real way. 1. Chose family over everything. 1. He pulled Alice closer, no longer the cold, feared name that made men flinch, but simply a father, finally home. Apologize to my mama, Amara mumbled sleepily, without opening her eyes. I already did, Siwu whispered. The real way. Comment your honest answer below, and share if this story moved you.